Dang, I look sort of swole right now. I've been working out lately.
Really?
I mean,
I can't see.
You don't see it. It's popping. Why?
Don't see.
Right there?
Nope. Don't. Nope. Nothing.
It's sort of popping.
Welcome into Scoop City. I'm the athletic senior NFL insider, Dianna Russini.
And I'm Chase Daniel, played 14 years in the NFL.
Wild card weekend was thrilling, yet we didn't really have a game that made us go, we didn't know that about them, right? I feel like we kind of knew a lot about everything we saw in
All
terms
the knowns. Yep.
the knowns, right? The quarterbacks that were going to be stars turned out to be the stars. The defenses that needed to step up big, stepped up big. We're going to talk about the Bills, the Ravens playing the best football right now at the right time. Their quarterbacks playing the best football. We also have some major news. The Dallas Cowboys and Mike McCarthy have parted ways. Chase, you have been hinting at this almost like an insider for the last few weeks. You kept saying it was too weird the way they were going along the business of this. We just kept saying, well, this is Jerry. This is how he does it. You know, what do we expect from him? And now it is official. Mike McCarthy is out from the Dallas Cowboys. So let's just get right into it. Here's what I'm hearing around the league. Well, it's official. Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys no longer. We've been trying to predict this for the last few weeks because it really seemed like no one knew what Jerry Jones wanted to do. Even those that were close to him were sharing with a lot of people, a lot of reporters covering the team, that they're just going to take this thing day by day. Obviously, publicly, they've been saying they want to take the time. Take a look at the body of work is the line they kept using, but it's official. They've decided that they are going to move on after they declined the Chicago Bears from interviewing Mike McCarthy just a few days ago.
Jerry.
So I feel like this is surprising, but also not, right? Because we all kind of felt this could go one way or the other here. And I think I am surprised that they waited this long. I thought if they were going to move on from him, they were going to do it right at the end of the season there so they could just hop in on this head coach search as we're seeing all the other teams do. So now Dallas is behind.
Yeah, they're behind, but also I feel like they knew this was coming, and I feel like they sort of did Mike McCarthy a little bit wrong because he's getting a late head start to the coaching carousel with all the openings out there. But, I mean, I feel like Jerry and team and front office executives, they came full circle. Because let's not forget, let's just go back to before this year, and you know I love my term, lame duck coach. Jerry Jones made Mike McCarthy lame duck coach at the beginning of the year. He did not have a contract. The writing was on the wall. He was going to have to do something special for him to keep his job. Okay, now Dak Prescott gets hurt. They fight down the stretch with Cooper Rush. I get that. Then all of a sudden, like 4 or 5 games before the end of the year, he must have a good agent, Mike McCarthy. The narrative sort of switches like, oh, we're going to keep Mike McCarthy. Like, oh, he's so great for us. There's really no one else out there. And then lately, I have felt, I know nothing. I'm not an insider. I have felt just by what is being put out in the internet and by people I talk to that it's been moving the opposite direction. Like, why wouldn't you go ahead and negotiate with him? There's been no contract talks. There's been none of that stuff. So I think that, to me, was the biggest thing for Mike McCarthy, not having these contract talks with Jerry Jones. And to be honest with you, I don't really fault Jerry for it, if I'm being honest, because when Mike McCarthy signed his contract, he knew and he put in there an exclusive negotiating window. Does not mean they have to negotiate. It just means you cannot go and sign with another team. So Jerry was probably still taking the time that he afforded himself because he's a business. And in the contract, he said, hey, guess what? I'm going to take my time. You know, Dianna, there's back channeling with some other guys. And if Jerry didn't have his guy picked, I am not sure that he would have made this move because Mike McCarthy is going to get a job this cycle, in my opinion.
Yeah, the whole scenario was a little bizarre the way this year went. And, you know, Chase, if you remember, and I know sometimes it's hard because so much happens every week, we were firing Mike McCarthy like week 6. You know, like it was sort of known that, all right, this isn't working. They need something different. They need to figure out who the right coach is going to be. They need a better staff, a better defensive coordinator, better OC. Just all of it just seemed like they needed to flush it. And then they started to come alive. And then Jerry started to speak well of Mike. And I think that's what really threw this whole thing off, is we started to believe the great actor Jerry Jones, when he started to talk about how much he loved and respected what Mike was doing with his team. And then, of course, in the end. So just like we've talked about before about this idea of the trapeze artist, right? Like you very rarely let go of one to go grab onto the other unless there's another ring there for you to grab, right? So the trapeze artist here, if they're letting go Mike McCarthy, who I think we can all agree is a good coach, maybe not right for the Cowboys, they are letting go to someone else, right? They have to know that there's someone there that wants this job and someone that they've had their eye on. Otherwise, they're not making this move because that's usually how it works. So the question is, who does Jerry have his eye on, right? We know that Ben Johnson has been the biggest name now that Mike Vrabel has the head coaching job in New England. Cliff Kingsbury has been coming up. We saw what he did with the Commanders wildcard weekend. Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, Joe Brady we saw put on a show for Buffalo against Denver.
Liam Cohen, too.
Liam Cohen with Tampa Bay. Do you think it's going to be someone out these names? Like someone outside the list of the candidates because I do feel like we're all looking to the left and maybe Jerry's looking to the right on all this. That maybe, is it a Steve Sarkisian, right?
Whoa.
I'm just thinking of hot names of
Marcus Freeman,
who just signed a contract extension with Notre Dame.
So
seems happy there. So, but has taken the steps slowly. He's had other opportunities in the past, and he's always taken the safer spot to learn more on the job. So, look, to jump in to the NFL for the first time, to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach.
Yeah.
Right? Bill Belichick, Jerry Jones, they have a great relationship. Is a call made here? Now, Belichick's camp will tell you, up and down, left and right.
Of course they will.
They want to stay at North Carolina. I wonder if this changes. There's a lot of questions right now that we got to go dig on to get some answers as this story is just breaking. We're recording this as the news is happening, but also before Monday night's game between the Rams and the Vikings. So a lot to make of this. Now, here's my thing. We're seeing a lot of these organizations really look for the leader of men that we talk about a lot. We're seeing some open to that play caller type, to Ben Johnson. Do you think for the way this Dallas Cowboys roster is put together right now, they need a culture guy? Or do you think they need someone to come in here and really give this offense a shot in the arm here and a boost so they can get into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget last year, okay, not this year. Last year, Dak Prescott finished second in MVP voting. So the offense had a shot in the arm, right? You go into the season, you don't get a running back, all that stuff happens. And back to your point, because I wanted to weigh in on it, like, who are they going to hire? To me, it's like, I feel like it has to be an outside-the-box hire. I feel like it has to be a guy that we're not expecting that has been a head coach before. And what you were saying is genius, because I do think it's got to be a culture guy, but I also think it has to be a culture guy who is either really good at offense or really good at defense. I don't know if you can just have a CEO type coach with the Dallas Cowboys, because quite honestly, if you're taking the Dallas Cowboys job, you know you have no say on that roster. And I would say that has sort of been the shortfall in Mike McCarthy, because he hasn't had control of that, because Jerry's not giving up the GM title. So a name that comes to mind for me is Mike Tomlin. Like, we're talking about his Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and I know he's under contract, but there's been a lot of talk, and I've been pretty heavy on it. Like, I feel like a guy like Mike Tomlin, who would bring in a legitimate offensive coordinator, would be that culture guy, right? He's got that defensive background, but their defense is sort of faltered. I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry calls about Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin, I think Mike Tomlin needs to get through with the Steelers and get done with the Steelers. I don't think the Steelers need to move on from Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin needs to move on from the Steelers. That's how I truly believe. It's almost when you've been there so long and you haven't won a playoff game since 2016, the message that Mike Tomlin's sending in the locker room, it probably is a little watered down. Like, oh, same story. We're losing in the wild card round 5 of the last 6 years or whatever it is. So Mike Tomlin, I look at him as like an Andy Reid or a Sean Payton, type of let's leave where we've been at forever. Let's go have some success somewhere else, hire a really good offensive coordinator, get that defense fixed. I just think it's a fascinating situation. And I mean, who knows what Jerry will do? I think Tomlin makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's this idea that the Mike Tomlin Steelers are good because of him, but also unable to move forward because of him, is how you see it. And that was a quote that was given to a coach in the league, to our Mike Sando, and I thought it perfectly painted how Mike Tomlin is seen. And maybe it's even felt. So you, Chase, you're officially on the Mike Tomlin to Dallas train. So at this point, it makes it the thing. I think that makes sense. I think it's a smart take.
Yeah.
I think let's see if it happens. Let's see what Pittsburgh does. Let's see if they're willing to move on from Mike Tomlin. I still think that's a hard move for Pittsburgh, knowing that Mike has given this organization so much success. We're going to dive into the whole Steelers situation. Yeah. All right, so you bring up Mike Tomlin. Let's talk about Mike Tomlin's Steelers losing to the Ravens. Our Steelers writer at The Athletic, Mike DeFabo, used the phrase football purgatory to describe what this team is right now. They have not won a playoff game since January 2017, right? Fans are calling for Mike Tomlin's head right now. A lot of Steelers fans just frustrated. They just don't think that they're going to be able to get to the point they want to get to if he is their head coach. Something happened to this Pittsburgh team over the last 4 to 5 weeks, right? Yeah. This is not the same team we were talking about in November. It's not even close. Something changed. And I don't know what it is, because their defense wasn't playing the same. Their offense doesn't look not even close to resembling what we were talking about on this show. We were giving them we're giving their defense all their flowers at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And it just seemed that it started to, and obviously the things that you're hearing in the locker room, that always becomes a problem. I don't think, Tomlin does a great job of keeping that stuff in house. And I do think they contained what could have been a big issue in a lot of other organizations. But something isn't right. And it showed. And they ran out of steam, and the Ravens ran all over them. From your perspective, what do you think happened?
Well, 5 straight losses, never a good thing. It's hard not to point the finger at the defense. I think the last 6 games of the year, including the playoffs, I think they were giving up over 30 points per game. That's not the Steel Curtain defense that we know. And they have good players. They haven't had injuries. Patrick Queen, TJ Watt, Meek and Fitzpatrick, those are guys that have made all-pro teams, are Pro Bowlers. And so for me, when you watch the game, specifically the game against the Ravens, I thought, quit's a wrong word. I thought that they just had no effort. They played with no effort. They played with no enthusiasm. And in what is a huge game of the season, in a playoff game, in a road game, and you got to control Lamar, just some of the effort for some of the guys, like not tackling Lamar, or not, the fundamentals were messed up. I mean, on a couple of these zone reads by Lamar, the Steelers defense had 3 guys running with Lamar, and Derrick Henry runs straight up the middle untouched for 45 yards. It's like one of those things where it was what the Steelers have been known for, is they have been known for being a very, very disciplined team. You're not going to run up and down the field on us. The Ravens had almost 300 yards rushing, just outwilled them, and that's not the Steelers team we know. And then you look at Russell Wilson too. Yeah, he didn't play great down the stretch. He played well in the second half, but does he come back? Justin Fields is a free agent. Russell Wilson's a free agent. They don't have a quarterback. Both Najee Harris and and Jaylen Warren are both free agents as well. It's like, what do you do? I think it's time for a total rebuild. You have to find the quarterback of the future. You cannot put a Band-Aid over the quarterback. That's been the issue for Mike Tomlin since he's really left with Ben Roethlisberger. Since he left it, they haven't had a quarterback.
That's exactly their issue. And if you're Mike Tomlin and you're sitting in the owner's office this week discussing the future of this franchise, how are you not just saying, I need a quarterback? Whatever we just did, we tried. And I give them points for trying to be creative, taking a chance on 2 talented quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. But the bad quarterback play is holding this team back, even though they tried, and they showed some signs of that. And that's really reflective of how great Mike Tomlin is that they were able to squeeze as much as they were able to. So I'm with you. I think they need to sort of figure out what is next? And I think this is one of the harder organizations to figure out because of the point that we discussed earlier in regards to McCarthy. Is Mike Tomlin the best thing for them now? His record says yes. He's a top five head coach in football.
No doubt.
It's hard to argue that. But sometimes it's okay to say, you know what? This isn't working anymore. Like, you're great, I'm great. I think we need to move on. And I do think your Andy Reid example when he left Philadelphia is a good one. And we'll see what they do at the quarterback position for next year. They've got a lot of questions. A few weeks ago,
a lot of free agents.
It seemed that Russell Wilson was going to be back for sure a few weeks ago. I bet you there's going to be a lot more conversations this offseason about what they do moving forward here. And meantime, on the other side of it, of course, Lamar Jackson, healthy. He's fresh. Offense, a little slow at first, right? But then they were able to sort of find their identity and get going there. I was thinking as I was watching him make some of these plays, always those plays that you think the play's dead and it's like, he's still going. I don't know how. Remember we talked about how much weight he lost? I was mocking him, like, why is he losing all this weight? He's going to get hurt, right? Because that was a little bit of the worry there if he were to slim down. And he kept saying that he lost that weight to be more elusive. How much more elusive could you be? Apparently a lot more, right? Because what he was doing against the Steelers, they had no answers. Mike Tomlin, even in his interview, his face said it all. Like, we can't stop him. There's just no way to do it. So, of course, Derrick Henry finished with 186 yards, 2 touchdowns on 26 carries. And those two, we could probably argue all day long, how does one help the other? Because it's apparent that is without a doubt one of the best signings of the offseason, which I'm sure we'll do at the end of the year once the season wraps up fully, of like the best signings, and Derrick Henry's for sure one of them. So I can't wait for this one coming up. Ravens head to Buffalo to play the Bills next weekend. Chase, I think this is going to be the playoff game of the decade. Like, I think this is the game. This is the game.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that at all. I think that what the world has been wanting, MVP 1 versus MVP 2. I don't know how the voting's, quite honestly, I don't even know how you voted, because I know you're an MVP voter, which is awesome. There's only 50, right? This is going to settle it. Unfortunately, like, the voting was already passed. But I think that, look, it's going to be a really amazing game. The NFL thinks so too. It's Sunday night, prime time. It's the last game in the divisional round. There's going to be over 30 million people watching this game. I think it's going to be a shootout. But I do think that Lamar Jackson has more on the line than Josh Allen. And I say that because coming into this postseason, Lamar was 2-4 in the playoffs. Now he's 3-4, but they beat a team that most people thought he should be. And he did have 1 or 2 special plays. He didn't really have to do a lot. He was like playing with the Steelers. Like, he's like, let me just run, let me throw. This is going to be a much more difficult test because the Buffalo Bills are a really well-coached team. Sean McDermott, you saw what they did on defense last week to Bo Nix, okay? Only allowed 7 points. I think it's going to be Lamar's toughest test. I think Lamar can go a long way. Even if he plays like really, really well and they lose, I think for me, I would change the narrative a little bit. Now, I'd love to see Lamar beat Patrick Mahomes, right? Because I feel like the Chiefs are just going to like walk right past the Texans into their 7th straight AFC Championship game. But this is a huge, huge matchup for the legacy, not only Lamar Jackson, but Josh Allen as well. I mean, all the marbles on the line. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we'll touch on the Bills and Josh Allen in a second, because I first just want to hop back into the Chargers-Texans game. My Texans come alive. They're back. They're great.
You were off the bandwagon. Now you're back.
I quit them and hopped to Philly. I may hop back on Houston.
Jeez,
but
Louise.
Before we get into some of the stuff that we saw from Houston, where it just seemed once they a little bit like the Ravens, once they sorted it out early on, it was like, okay, they just took off. It's the Chargers that I want to talk to you about, right? So you had said last show, you were worried that if Justin lost this game, that everything was going to be amplified in terms of his inability to win in the postseason. He's 0-2, and you don't want to start having those conversations of, is he going to be that really good quarterback that just can't win in the postseason? I don't think we're there yet. He's still really young. What do you think happened now? Just for him and watching what that game was. I know Houston, look, they smothered him. The pressure was fantastic on him. They had a really good defensive plan. But we saw Justin make mistakes we didn't see him make all year.
That's exactly right. I mean, 4 total interceptions in one game. He had 3 interceptions the entire season, the previous 17. So a couple things. I thought he got a little bit aggressive when he shouldn't have been. I thought that there were some checkdowns he could have taken. The first interception where he rolls to the right, throws back across your body, that's one-on-one. Quentin Johnson, at least go up there, gets intercepted. I understand that. And then, look, the Will Dissly one that goes off his hands, I'm not worried about the one. And the end of the game, I'm not worried about either. He's trying to make a play. The one I'm worried about is the overthrow to Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey on a choice route pushes at 8 yards. Justin's ready to throw it at 5. Overthrow, pick 6. That changed the dynamic of the game. And look, I agree with you. I don't think it's time to sound the alarm on Justin Herbert quite yet. Look, I played with him for 2 years. Great dude. Wants to win more than anyone. And he's probably taken this loss harder than anyone, right? He's going to be in hiding and understanding like, hey, like I just need to really understand what went wrong. He's going to get better from it. You look at some of the great quarterbacks of our generation, and I don't know if Justin's there yet. I think he's pushing the line, right? Matthew Stafford didn't make the playoffs till his 13th year. Okay, Peyton Manning didn't make the playoffs till his first playoff win, 13 years for Stafford, 6 years for Manning. Drew Brees, 6th year. So Justin just finished his 5th year. We're getting to that point of the conversation where we need to say something if it doesn't happen next year. And that pains me to say, but also you got to go back and you got to give him credit for the season that he had. 23 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he's doing it with the supporting cast that quite honestly is not there. Ladd McConkey, not knowing what he was going to be into the year, can't put him in that category. Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson, Will Dissly, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins was out. Like he's doing this with a much less supporting cast. Thought he played well all year long, but until he wins a playoff game, it's going to be a little bit of a narrative.
Chase, I literally can go back to Scoop City episode 10 where we talked about the Chargers and just replay what you said about the Chargers. And it's essentially what you just did. And it's not because, we're stale. It's what you spoke about, your concerns in the summer were exactly what revealed itself in the playoffs. And look, I think the best news coming out of this, on top of the fact that Justin was able to make a lot out of not much, is just the job their new head coach did in his first year back in the NFL with Justin Herbert. They seem to have this blossoming relationship. And now they know they need to just go get him some weapons. They need to fill some of the holes on this roster. The good stuff's there. Like, I don't have worry about him being an Andy Dalton, right? Like, I don't think that's going to be Justin Herbert's path.
No way.
In fact, I think the stock is up because he's got the right head coach there who's going to make sure he gives his quarterback all the things that he needs.
Dianna.
Meantime,
Come on now, stock up.
I'm all in. And I was all in on the Texans. I was all about the addition of Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs and Hunter. But those O-line problems all season long are really what probably freaked me out. And I still think it's going to be the issue as we continue here as they get ready to face the Kansas City Chiefs. But either way, CJ Stroud, loved what he saw. I love what I saw from him. 22 of 33, 282 yards, a touchdown, just 1 interception. Rex Ryan calling it a bye for the Chargers, becoming bulletin board material. I love it.
And then the head coach saying something. Nico Ryan said something about it. I love that. He called Rex Ryan out in the after game meeting. It was awesome.
Good for him. Just goes to show everyone's got the rabbit ears. We're all paying attention.
No doubt.
So they've got to head to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. We'll definitely talk about that next episode. We'll dive into the preview of that one because I do think the Texans have the edge in one area. Next show, I'll tell you all about it. How about that for a tease?
What a great
Speaking of tease, this is Scoop City at the Athletic, not ESPN's Sunday NFL Countdown, if you are wondering, because you may have seen my friend and superstar co-host here, Chase, on their Sunday morning pregame show. Great story. I like to think my wonderful friends over at ESPN, those producers, saw us talk about this and saw you discuss how difficult it is sometimes to understand and comprehend everything that Sean Payton gives you in a playbook. So they did this really cool piece with you and Drew about what it's like to be coached by Sean Payton. And you've done a good job here on the show telling us about it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was cool because it came together so quickly. Like they came Friday into my house. It took them about, it was a 2-man crew. It took them about like an hour and a half to 2 hours to set up. I did 10 minutes of a Zoom interview, and then it took them an hour. So they were there like 3 hours, and I was on Zoom. I felt bad, but it was cool. The production quality was cool, and Dan Graziano, I think, who led the story, did a really good job. I know you know him as well.
Yeah. To me, it's been one of the best stories in football, really, is that relationship between Sean Payton and Bo Nix, and seeing that growth and really be encouraged by what we saw this entire season. You can't do anything but give them you have to give them their flowers for what they did this year. Despite the fact that the moment was big for them, right? They were we talked about this last show. Even though I thought that they were going to put up a bigger fight, and when they came out and scored first, I was like, Let's go. Young and hungry is dangerous. Young, hungry, and dumb is dangerous. You know, when you just don't know any better.
The fake punt,
especially
all that stuff.
Just all of it. And we knew it was coming. But for the future of Denver, right? A great second season for Sean Payton compared to his first year. He looks re-energized. He looks like the coach that you had when you were in New Orleans. He's back to that guy. What do you think this team is going to work on in this offseason that's going to really take them to the next level, to give Bo just that support? Because they got the guy. It's there.
Yeah, no, they definitely have the guy. I actually talked to the offensive coordinator and another high offensive staff member after the game, and they were just like, hey, man, like, I'm surprised we made it this far. So I don't know if they were actually thinking. I mean, everyone thinks. You just don't know, especially because you have $65 million in cap space that's tied up in the quarterback, and you have all this, like, what Sean Payton was able to do is one of the greater coaching jobs of this season. He won't win Coach of the Year. Probably shouldn't, but he should be mentioned for it, because you go out, you get the sixth quarterback taken, and that was your guy. You knew exactly what you wanted to do with him. A little bit of rough patch to start, and then Bo Nix really blossomed as the year went on. I think they have to go out and get a number 2 option at receiver outside of Cortland Sutton. I thought Cortland Sutton played excellent down the stretch. I really do. Gave Bo Nix a true number 1 target. Defensively, Vance Joseph nails. We were there at training camp. We saw it. Like, we saw them shut down Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love in training camp. I thought that they were always going to be good. Patrick Surtain is probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. So you have a really good defensive front. You just got to get a couple more weapons on offense, maybe another running back, and I feel like they'll be rolling. Look, they're in a really tough division, though. Let's be real. So for them to make the playoffs was just excellent.
When I think of a high-flying, productive Sean Payton offense, though, run the way he wants it ran, I'm thinking a strong ground game, right? We saw it in those days in New Orleans. When he's got the ground game, everything else seems to click. When you got to have a good tight end, right? I obviously think of like Jeremy Shockey. Yeah. It's like the first thing that came to mind.
So true. Jimmy Graham.
Like that. A Jimmy Graham, right? He needs that type of tight end in this offense to help this young rookie quarterback continue to develop and grow.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's the defense. I mean, Vance Joseph was phenomenal this season. Unbelievable. And we talked about it last show, about how I said that Kansas City Chiefs players kept talking to me about this Broncos D, how good they are. So they've got all the ingredients to compete in a really, 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 really hard division. Meantime, you got the Bills, who they're just playing good, balanced football. Allen was 20 for 26, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran for 46 yards, and Buffalo had 210 rushing yards against a Denver defense that ranked 3rd best in the NFL at stopping the run in the regular season. So, like I said, balanced all around. It's the most simple thing we talk about in football when we say you want to peak at the right time, right? I know you talk about it on the Fox show. I heard you discuss it. You want to be able to bring this all together at the right moment. And that's what I see in this Bills team, a team that we had worries about We had so many concerns. I just think the pressure of no Diggs has changed this entire vibe with this Bills team. And this is not a knock on Steph. I just think that's a great example of someone that was helping you in some moments and perhaps maybe hurting you in ways that you weren't really noticing.
Yeah.
And now
That's such
we
a
see
good
it.
take. No, it's such a good take. And I think with Buffalo, no one expected them to do anything this year because, you weren't sure about the playmakers, how James Cook was going to be, how Josh Allen was going to handle a lesser supporting cast. And then they go out there and just really from start to finish, be able to secure the number 2 seed. I think the Bills are Super Bowl ready. I mean, I say this, and they got a really tough test coming into Highmark Stadium and the Baltimore Ravens this year. But the way Josh played this game against the Broncos is how I expect playoff games to be played. It's the game called by Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator. 44 rushing attempts, only 26 passing attempts. Now, remember, this game was a 13-7 game with 5:33 left in the third quarter on the 4th and 1 when Sean McDermott said, hey, I am going to let you go for it. And that was the scramble around, big-time throw, touchdown to Ty Johnson. And then they started rolling from there. So Joe Brady let Josh Allen feel out the game, let the game come to him. I thought he was calm, cool, collected. Didn't try to press, didn't try to push stuff down the field when it wasn't open. And then he ends up with over 300 total yards and 2 touchdowns. So this is the type of thing that I want to see continue into the next round. Now, I agree that the Broncos defense is great. And they did this against a great defense. They still put up 31 points. However, I believe this Ravens defense, there's no one playing better since week 11 of this year. So they're going to have a tough test.
Yeah, the development and growth that we've seen from Josh Allen this season, the mistakes that we've kind of known him to make in these moments in years past, it's like he's grown out of it. He doesn't do it anymore. It's how it's supposed to go, but you don't always see that, right? Like he's not throwing the ball away or losing the ball or losing control in the red zone like we've seen him in years past. I feel like he's really developed this last season, and I think Joe Brady does have a lot to do with it, which is why you're seeing Joe Brady get a lot of opportunity. So Denver, tough road loss for them. It was always going to be a challenge for them to go to Buffalo and do that. And if you are the road team, and if you're playing in the city of Philadelphia, you can't mess up the opening kickoff, Green Bay. You can't, right? Let's talk Packers Eagles.
They recovered that.
As soon as I saw it, though, I said, this is not how you want to start this thing off in Philadelphia, right? So, hello, Philly's defense. You talked about Vic Fangio tons on this show.
Yep.
And I really thought yesterday was one of their best defensive performances. This young defensive group has just been lights out this season, and they're we're seeing all the great teams. They're getting better as the season goes. I had worry about this defense early on in the year, and now they're the ones stepping up. So the Eagles finished with 4 takeaways, 1 on special teams, and they are ranked number 1 by yards allowed. The Packers didn't score until 6 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Right? That is a problem. So I just actually want to start with Jalen Hurts. I want to go to the other side of the ball when we talk Philadelphia, because I had a text exchange with someone in football this morning, and he just wrote to me, Jalen's passing is going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. So I've heard you say that.
Yeah, I've been pretty outspoken about it.
You have. Can you explain to people, especially those Philadelphia Eagles fans that listen to the show, we love you guys, but you guys get mad when Chase says this.
Yeah,
What is it about his passing game that is driving you nuts, or perhaps maybe that you have some of these worries that it seems that other people do?
Yeah, I don't know if driving me nuts is the right word. Maybe driving the receivers nuts to be reading on the sideline is more like the words that we were looking for, because I don't have any say. And if people think I hate Jalen, I don't hate Jalen. I don't hate him at all. In fact, when he's playing, he's one of the better winners in the NFL. Now, there's a huge difference, Dianna, between winners and stats, right? Wins and stats. Everyone's like, oh, wins are a QB stat. Wins are a QB stat. Well, this game is going to go to show you that, man, the biggest thing is wins are not a quarterback stat, because For me, it just diminishes the argument when you look at it, because stat-wise, 13 to 21, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, high pass rating looks great. But if you really dive into it, you can't look at the stats. He had 37 yards passing with 3 minutes left to go in the third quarter. 37 yards passing. And some of it has to do with Green Bay's defense. They were pretty good at times. Actually, they were really good at times. Most of it, I would say, falls on Jalen. Now, I don't want to go too difficult on him or hard on him, but could he have been rusty? He didn't play in 21 days. All this stuff, really rarely practiced. Maybe. But I'm seeing some stuff open, right? And I feel like Jalen has to see receivers open for him to throw it. And it's no coincidence that we've been talking about this. Like, I remember we started talking about this, Dianna, the Panthers game. That's when A.J. Brown, after the Panthers game, stood up and said, passing is the issue. No kidding, it's the issue. It's always been the issue. It's really the only weakness on the entire team. That's not saying Jalen Hurts isn't a good quarterback, but when you look at it, okay, and they threw the ball 21 times, it's exactly what they did after the 2-2 start. When their first 4 games of the year, Jalen Hurts was averaging 37 pass attempts a game. Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni got together. Jalen throwing the football is not the way we're going to win. Let's pass the football. They averaged 22 pass attempts a game. We talked about this a ton. They even said, hey, we can't trust Jalen to throw the ball when the game's on the line. My issue with the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's a real one, if this team gets behind, will they be able to throw their way back into a game? That is what I'm worried about, because if you play the Vikings or you play the Rams, they're going to score points. I get your defense is great. Their defense has been carrying them all year. This is in no way, shape, or form hate against Jalen Hurts whatsoever. It's just the facts on what I'm seeing. He's not going through progressions really well.
Yeah, I think people have to listen to the argument you're making, the observations you've made, and separate the emotion in this, right? I think people hear you make a critique of his passing game and they think you're calling him a bad quarterback. I think the situation that you're painting, this idea of the Philadelphia Eagles coming from behind, are they going to be able to do this? It's a big question, and I think it's a really fair one. Meantime, on the other side, you have the Packers, Jordan Love, who I think we were really hoping and expecting to have a superb year. I would call it, would you say it was an average year?
I'd say it was okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah. No, it's really fair.
It was okay?
Yeah.
Look, I know the whole pass catcher storyline was beat up and down, left and right in Green Bay. You know, Matt LaFleur commented on a bunch of times, basically just being exhausted by the whole thing. But then when you look around the league and you see the other NFC teams still playing in this thing and you see the pass catchers they have, you go, okay, well, maybe they need to get someone else. Maybe they do, right? Because you look at the Vikings, they got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. You got the Lions, they got Sam Laporta, they've got St. Brown, Williams. You've got the Eagles with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, right? So you look around the NFC and they've got their receivers. And then you look at Jordan Love and he's got a lot of young guys and some decent ones. And remember, he talked to us in camp. He's like, oh, these guys are so good. But we saw it. I think it showed itself. So I think that's going to be something that they probably need to address this offseason.
Well, first and foremost, they have to stay healthy. And I would agree with you that Jordan Love had an average season. Got hurt, obviously, first week of the season against the Eagles. And I don't think he really ever looked the same. There was a stretch where he didn't throw any interceptions in the middle of the year. But I think that was the biggest issue, is him putting the ball in harm's way. And if you look about how this Green Bay team was built this year, it was the run game with Josh Jacobs. They spent a lot of money on him. I think they were the 5th or 6th ranked rushing team in the NFL. And then their defense was top 6 in almost every major category. I would say the one part they need to figure it out is not Jordan Love, but keeping Jordan Love healthy, whether that's offensive line. I actually think that they really like their receivers, Wicks, Dobbs, Reed, Christian Watson, when they're healthy. I think they're one of the better younger receiving core. And if you look at Green Bay's really success with even Favre to Rodgers to Love, they have really young receivers that grow with the group. So they don't really take receivers high. They never have. I remember the Aaron Rodgers thing, never had a first-round receiver, all that stuff. I think they're actually fine on receivers. I like their receivers. Just too many mistakes out of the quarterback position this year.
Yeah, so you just poo-pooed my whole thought here that they needed to get better there. So Okay, but if you're saying
it doesn't mean you're not right. I wouldn't be surprised if they look for a 2 or 3. But if you actually look at like what they're doing, I think the receivers are fine. I think that you can get better offensive line wise rather than a receiver. Another deep threat outside Christian Watson would be my thing, because when Christian Watson got hurt, the pass game vertically really struggled.
It changed. Yeah. So we'll see. Jordan Love obviously got paid this year. He's getting married this summer. Maybe this was just a lot in 1 year for him. So we'll see how they flush this out in the offseason. All right, let's get to the Commanders and the Bucs. Washington advancing for the first time since 2006. That's almost 20 years, this team. And the Commanders are no joke either. 13 wins. I think it's one of these stories where we watched their season going, oh, this is cute. I think some people did that, right? Like, oh, look at this rookie quarterback just helping find ways to get this team going. But now that they are real deal, and his personality, his poise, his leadership on this team, to me, is why this franchise is now going to turn a gigantic corner for the next 10 years, because they've got the guy. There's just no questions asked.
There's no questions asked at all. And to go on the road, hostile environment, to play the way he played, so cool, so calm, so collected. It's his third game, Dianna, this year where there's 0 punts and 0 turnovers. That is wild to me. Dan Quinn said, hey, we have full belief in you that on 4th down, we're just going to let you go for it. That 4th down pass, touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin was unbelievable. Scary Terry going up, getting the touchdown. But yeah, Jaden Daniels, this Bucs defense too, people don't realize they were number 2 in almost every major category since week 11. They had a massive, massive turnaround for this defense. So it was not some walk in the park. The way he goes through progressions, true pocket passer, but can kill you with your feet. That 3rd and 1 scramble where he was touched 7 yards in the backfield, was able to get it and them to kick the field goal. That put the icing on the cake for them. And it just, I truly believe, and I don't say this lightly, I truly believe that Jaden Daniels is the next great quarterback in the NFL. And like, I really think it is. He's just done so much. That Dan Quinn, they brought in a lot of veteran free agents, has done a great job as well. I mean, even if they don't win another game, to me, it's an overwhelming success this year in Washington, D.C.
I've been saying it on the show to you that I think he's Lamar Jackson 2.0. I think he could be better. His passing game, it'll continue to develop and grow. I think this is what we're going to see over the next few years. So congratulations to them as they move on. They were celebrating, from what I hear, last night. And because it's such a big deal, because, you say, oh, you haven't done much yet. Just the fact that they were able to do this as a team in their first year is absolutely tremendous. Cliff Kingsbury obviously doing a good job, which is why you have teams like the Chicago Bears, the New Orleans Saints interested in his services. So we'll see if he'll take on some of these interviews. I still think he wants to stay in Washington, but we'll see how this whole thing pans out. And then you have the other side of it. You've got the Bucs, and I do think Baker Mayfield. We talk about the resurgence of him. I think he's grown. I think he's kind of grown out of that, right? Baker Mayfield is good. I think we can go and just
Baker
say
Mayfield
that's
is a franchise quarterback.
Correct. This isn't just some story of a quick revival for a year or two. They've got the guy there. We'll see what happens. I know Todd Bowles was getting a lot of heat for some of his game management, some of his decision making, and he gets that a lot. So I'm curious to see what they do. I've got my eyes on Tampa. We'll see if they stick with everything that's there and what moves they're going to make, if they make any moves. Liam Cohen's obviously a name that's got a lot of buzz in coaching circles right now for opening positions. So we'll see if Tampa Bay wants to find a way to keep this group intact. So I expect some stuff over the next few weeks there, Chase.
Oh, do you?
I always know when I'm saying something that you want to know more when you just don't say much. So
caught off guard. All right.
I'm just saying I'm going to keep my eye on it. I don't know if anything's going to happen.
Back-to-back division champs, playoff
but
win.
I'm paying attention. Attention. All right, Chase, let's take a quick break. When we get back, Mike Vrabel becomes the Patriots head coach officially. We've been talking about it for weeks. Everyone knew. Worst kept secret ever. We'll talk about what he brings to New England and the Ben Johnson sweepstakes heats up. There is a team lurking. We'll tell you about it next. All right, back here on Scoop City, the New England Patriots have made it official. They have introduced Mike Vrabel as their new head coach. Something that it makes sense. It was never a marriage that made me go, I don't know about that. Obviously, he had tons of success there as a player. He was inducted into their Hall of Fame over a year ago. And Zach Rosenblatt popped on our show just a few weeks ago talking about how Vrabel's priorities have been ownership, collaboration, and quarterback. And I think that's all in line with what New England has and what it can provide. Did you happen to see Will Compton and Taylor Lewan's posts about it?
I saw Taylor Lewan's post and I thought it was hilarious. The video that he did about what to expect of Mike Vrabel.
It was the scariest video, though. He basically
kept coming in and out. I'm like, dude,
he was like the senior in high school telling the freshman, like, "Oh, you want to know about your teacher? I'm going to tell you about your teacher. Yeah. This is what life is about to be."
Good insight.
And what I liked about the video, though, is you can tell, even though it's supposed to be funny, of look, this guy's going to be hard. Like, he's going to change your habits. Things are going to be different. You can't be late. Like, everyone's being held accountable. You could tell there's so much respect in there. And I think that's why the New England Patriots knew that this was the right call, because he does have a way of balancing a good amount of competitiveness with understanding, but also with accountability to try to force you to be the best version of you.
There's no doubt. I mean, he's a culture guy. He's going to be hard on the guys, but then he's also going to relax, be a player's coach. The fact that he's played, and even Taylor Lewan was saying he's going to make sure he knows how many years he played in the NFL. Thought that was hilarious. But for me, it's one of the more attractive coaching jobs, I think, in the market, because they did so poorly this year. You have your franchise cornerstones on offense with Drake May and on defense with Christian Gonzalez. People aren't talking about him. He's a legitimate playmaker. And then number two is you have the 4th overall pick in this draft. Abdul Carter comes to mind. He might be there. Travis Hunter, who knows what Cleveland's going to do at 2 for a quarterback. He could be around. So you're in a really good position to either trade up and go get a guy like Travis Hunter if you like him, or trade back. And the other thing, too, is they have $120 million in cap space. So they can spend in free agency. They need to solidify that offensive line. You have to get 2 legitimate threats at receiver in free agency to protect your quarterback, because right now they don't have any. And Drake May still did what he did this past year, showed a lot of growth, so it was a great job.
I just wonder if that Dallas Cowboys job was open before he took the Patriots job, if he would have been open to that.
Of course he would. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess you could say credit to ownership there in New England for
getting it done,
knowing that they got to get their guy, because I can tell you the Bears, the Jets, the Saints, the Raiders, the Jags, every team was making a push because they all knew this was happening. Everybody knew that New England was coming in hot. So they were all trying to get in touch and I guess sell their organizations in hopes that he would have some doubts about New England, but he winds up there, and I think the fan base there is just thrilled. Based on what I've been seeing on social media, it's really cool to see that they feel like they could be winners again after a really hard year last year under Jerod Mayo. Ben Johnson. Okay, so he wrapped up all of his virtual interviews over the weekend. He was busy. The Raiders are the team that are pushing for him, and it's all because of Tom Brady. And we've talked about it on the show. We know that Tom Brady is a minority owner and has a tremendous amount of influence. Mark Davis is smart to go, oh, wait, I have someone here who knows a lot about winning. Let me tap into that. Yeah. And that's really what they've allowed. And I think Brady's done a good job with Ben Johnson's camp in trying to paint this picture of, look, I'm not going to let the ball drop here. It's not the perfect situation, right? This isn't set up in terms of the quarterback like you're seeing in Chicago, like you're seeing in New England, but I can help provide those things that you're looking for in a winning organization.
I like Ben Johnson to the Raiders, right? It makes sense, all the sense in the world. He's probably going to get some say in the 53-man roster and saying who he wants, who he doesn't want. He's obviously going to, do a good job coaching the offense. They don't have a quarterback, okay? And their defense is so-so. So just know it's going to be a rebuild. You got to find your quarterback, whether it's through free agency or the draft. Not sure if they're drafting high enough. And quite honestly, not sure if there's enough guys out there in this draft that are good enough. My question is, how does this impact the Dallas Cowboys opening? How does it impact his candidacy with the Raiders? Because I know we're all in on Tom Brady, Raiders, Ben Johnson. But if you're Ben Johnson and you're looking at the Cowboys job with the star and the brand and Jerry Jones, Dak freaking Prescott, who, say what you want about him, finished second in MVP voting last year, don't you think that sort of sways his decision?
I don't, because what's the one thing that we know about Ben Johnson based on how he's been taking these interviews? He wants a big say on who's around him and who's going to be making those decisions. And Jerry Jones has said he's the general manager. Right? He's not giving that up. So, wow. I mean, if Ben Johnson thinks that Jerry Jones is a great general manager and can work under that, but just think about this, Chase, a first-time head coach, the first time he's going to do this, to do it in Dallas, yes, a dream, but I think that's hard. I think that's a tough job, just like I think New York would have been a tough job as well. Not that New York is interested in him and he's not interested in New York. So, to me, it's going to come down to Chicago. It's going to come down to Jacksonville, who appears to be open to giving Ben Johnson whatever it is that he needs. And then Tom Brady just in the ear. And the Chicago one is the one I'm really watching closely. This is a big hire.
Huge.
We're watching Jaden have so much success with Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn, and this thing is rolling. It looks easy to them.
Yeah,
Nothing has looked easy for Caleb in Chicago. And they need to find a way to bring someone in to apply that. Yeah. Because we've talked about it on the show a lot, and I've written about it. There's not this loss of confidence in Caleb Williams' ability throughout the league. No one's going, like, I know there's a debate right now of, did Chicago make a mistake? Should they have gone Jaden? Yeah, of course. Of course. But at the same time, two things can be true here, right? Caleb Williams is still a really good quarterback. And so is Jaden. Jaden is just off to a much better start because he has the right coaching and the right organization. It's so weird to say that about the Commanders, but that's true, right? Like they have turned the page on the old way of doing it. And Chicago needs to catch up. And Chicago's doing what the New York Jets are doing, which I'm sure you're seeing, which is they are interviewing a lot of people. I had a conversation with somebody in the league the other night about this idea of why are these teams interviewing so many people? Like, I don't understand it. Why not have, you painted a perfect picture last show, 3 or 4 of your best, and you pick from those. And this person who's part of one of the searches says, we haven't found what we're looking for. We're waiting for someone to tell us what it is, to answer our questions of what we're looking for, and no one has been able to do it. And I just thought that was so interesting.
It is.
How some of these coaches are preparing for these interviews. And I think a lot of them need practice and help and mentoring in some of these interviews, because I don't think a lot of these guys are hitting home runs, which is what look, obviously they're not, because look how many slips are being put in for new coaches, right? And it's just going to pick up after Minnesota plays. Brian Flores is going to get requests from the New York Jets, from the Chicago Bears, from the Raiders. I would think Brady wants to bring him in. So there is still so much to happen between now and really the end of this month in terms of this coaching cycle, as we start to see teams, I like to think, home in on this and start breaking it down and getting ready for the second round of interviews, because everyone's just probably wrapping up now. But by this Wednesday, most of those virtual interviews will be wrapped up with most of these coaches, and then we'll get to the second round. And then the in-person and this will go. But the New England Patriots, they are off and running. They don't have to worry about that.
They got their guy.
They've got their guy in place. So next show, let's dive into what we're going to see this weekend, what we can expect. I asked people on Twitter today if there was a team that just got bounced in the playoffs that you have hope in for next year. Like maybe a team that you thought deserves to still be in.
And I quote tweeted your
you did?
tweet.
I saw.
Oh, I did.
You said the team that doesn't deserve to be in there were the Steelers. And the team that does deserve to be, and I think we'll see them next year, are the Denver Broncos. I don't think they deserve to be there now, but I think the Broncos are going to be a team that are going to be a problem next year. So thanks to those people who've reached out with some of their answers. Broncos was the most common answer I saw, and I saw Bengals. Obviously, the Bengals didn't make it to the playoffs this year, but nobody is counting. But you count Joe Burrow out? I'm not counting Joe Burrow out.
Never.
Once they figure out who their new DC is going to be, and hopefully make some big moves this offseason, we will be talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, no doubt, next year. All right, that'll do it for us here on Scoop City, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Bye, guys. Talk to you next time.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.